Oh hey, it's Wes, and today it's time to talk about another mic set. It is the new Saramonic Blink 500 Pro X. You've probably seen some Saramonic stuff on the market before, mostly at a very low price point. But now they're trying to move up market with a more pro model. So how do they do? Well, we're going to compare this against a lot of the competition. We have the Smallrig Forevala, we have the Viltrox wireless system, we have the Hollyland Lark 150. Sure, we've got some 7 rims, we've got a lot of stuff going on here, and we're going to see how this fits into the marketplace. And as always, start with the categories, starting with the build quality. The Saramonic comes with this enormous charging case. I've already scratched it. Which might remind you of the first people to do that, as far as I'm aware, the Hollyland Lark 150. Very different form factor. This is a tall, cubish thing, rectangular. But this one is thinner. So they each have their ups and downs. This is easier to slide into a bag, whereas this is overall smaller, but it's too thick in every direction. And then the unit itself is very compact, very durable. The screen plastic is incredibly thick and rigid, so that is nice. Unlike on the new Smallrig Forevala, this is a thinner, squishier plastic, which I don't have the utmost confidence in. But thankfully, they're both protected by their cases most of the time anyway. The buttons are very small, not incredibly tactile, very compact though. If we look at a transmitter here, oh, I think this one's on. It's listening to me. Getting double audio here. It's the exact same form factor, so that's what the Rode Wireless Go does, it's what Viltrox does. It's not a dedicated design. It's identified transmitter receiver, so you can keep track of them a little more easily. Whereas with the Viltrox, you never know which one's which. These are very small, very light. No claim of weather sealing, not that any of these do. So I'm going to give that a build quality of 8 out of 10. Not the most inspired design, but it feels like it could really stand the test of time. But the features might not. So once again, we have a 2.4 gigahertz system here with a claimed 10-hour battery life. Now I have not tested this beyond 4 hours, so your mileage may vary, but that is an incredibly ambitious claim. As far as I know, it might be pretty close to being true. Again, I don't test these beyond 4 hours because it used to be 1 to 3 hours was the most you could expect out of these. This new generation though, they seem to have a lower power wireless system and lower power audio processing, because this also has a newer audio processing system with 48 kilohertz sampling, 16-bit, which is surprising in a small package like this. This claims a 100-meter distance, and we're going to check that real soon. But overall, as far as features go, we are missing some stuff that we expect to see these days, such as easy control interface like some knobs. It doesn't have color screens like, say, the Smallrig Forevala. It's a beautiful color LCD display. Got some easy control knobs. Also, it doesn't have internal audio storage like the DJI mic or the Rode Wireless Go 2, so we're going to give that an 8 out of 10 for feature set. Sound quality, well, you're listening to it right now, unedited sound. So we're going to plug in the microphone that came with it, and we'll see what that sounds like. Does it sound any different? I think it's going to sound quite familiar. So this microphone seems to be very similar to the ones that come with the Smallrig and with the Viltrox products and so forth. It's a very large capsule, it's a very warm, rich tone, not highly detailed. I'm more inclined to use my Sennheiser condenser mic. Let's try that. Well, that's weird. For some reason, my Sennheiser condenser mic doesn't quite fit into the audio jack on this. I actually noticed that before, but it's very strange because this mic works in every other system that I've plugged it into. If I plug it in all the way. But then we plug in our run-of-the-mill capsule mic and we're off to the races again. Let me know what you thought of the difference between those two things. I find the Sennheiser is more detailed, but it can also be a little bit sibilant. So overall, nothing spectacular, but also not bad at all. I'm going to give that a 7 out of 10 for audio quality. No surprises whatsoever. Usability. The most important factor in usability is the signal reliability, so let's go outside and test that versus the Smallrig. It's time for a test comparing the Smallrig wireless setup to the Saramonic Blink 500 Pro. So I have one on each shoulder. They're both 2.4 gigahertz transmitters, and we'll see how they get along with each other. Now, one might observe that perhaps they'll be interfering with one another, but that's kind of the point. I'm out in the middle of nowhere here where there is absolutely no cellular or wireless interference whatsoever. If any interference is created, it's just from the two of them. Very light interference. If they can't frequency hop, then that's their own problem, to be perfectly honest. So we're going to do our range test here. We're going to compare the video quality between, we have A7 IV with the iPhone 11 Pro. Both have a 24mm equivalent lens. Right now we're shooting with an ND8 plus a 1/8 black mist filter on the A7 IV, just to make things look just a little bit nicer. Let's get our range test going and see how we do. Obviously, we shouldn't have any cutouts at this distance. They're both rated for about 100 meters of distance. Now, we have the Smallrig going into the A7 IV and the Saramonic going into the iPhone. So we shouldn't be comparing audio quality at this point, just reception. Because the iPhone on its audio input does a lot of funky automatic stuff, and so I can't guarantee that it's going to have the right stuff to sound the same. All right, here we are about 25 meters away. Going to take a little turn, take a little turn, take a little turn. I don't know if anything cut out. We'll find out later. We're going to get a little further away here. I doubt we'll get to a full 100 meters because honestly, none of these ones that claim 100 meters actually get that far, which is pretty disappointing. All right, you can still see over there. Now we have a few trees in the way. I'm going to take a little turn. We are about 50 meters away now, and I turned around once. I continue down the path. I don't even know if I'm still on camera at this point. Now we're about 75 meters away. Getting a little uncomfortable with leaving my camera and my phone in the woods this far. Okay, so we have trees in the way. If I turn around this way with trees in the way, and then if I go over here, we have direct line of sight still. Take another turn at 75 meters away. And then I'm going to continue on. Sure, let's do it. About 100 meters away. Alright, there we go. I still mostly have line of sight to the camera, even if you can't see me, and I'm turning around right now. And I'm going to walk back by the tree line, so I still have some tree interference. The trees aren't exactly thick, they're a little bit sparse, but we'll see how they did. And I'm just going to keep babbling on here. So, the Saramonic and the Smallrig are very different rigs, physically speaking. The Smallrig takes on the design. It appears to be very similar to the Lark 150 from Hollyland. You've got the knobs in the back, whereas the Saramonic is a little bit more old-fashioned in that you gotta press buttons to get into the menu. You don't have like knobs and stuff to like physically control everything, which I've really come to expect and to enjoy using. We're almost back here. And honestly, most of the time using mics like this, you're not going to be that far away. That's kind of crazy. Although sometimes I'll use mics at a distance when I'm, say, filming a wedding. I want to get that camera out of the way so it's not distracting to the guests. And one interesting thing about the iPhone 14 Pro, we have a larger sensor with a nice large aperture, and so we get a slightly shallow depth of field. Now obviously it's not quite the same as our 24 1.8 lens here from Viltrox. It's not as shallow, but if I get real close to this iPhone, it actually has some very natural fall off. And this isn't in portrait or cinematic mode. This is just the lens itself producing that kind of look. And at f1.8, on our Viltrox lens, not quite the same. Still a lot more shallow. Stop it down a little bit. It's going to look a little more similar to f2.8 here. How's it look? How did it sound? Well, we'll find out when we get back to the edit. Back to US. If that wasn't against the Smallrig, I think we would have done better. The Smallrig, I think, is the first one that I have found that truly lives up to that 100-meter claim. This one, it did about as well as most mic systems on 2.4 gigahertz that I've tested. It was fine, but just not spectacular. One usability win is we have this battery charging case that if you're on the go, you don't even need to plug the case in, it just charges it up. But the case itself, the battery dies after 2 weeks for no reason. I complained about this to a smaller degree with the Hollyland Lark system, in that after a month or two it would drain itself while constantly charge cycling the devices inside. This one, in 2 weeks, it's empty. Now you would think that's because the receiver and transmitter were just draining power like crazy, but they remain fully charged. So I don't know where the power in the case is going. If I take them out of the case, they're totally fine for weeks on end, but I don't understand what's going on here, to be honest. The case does take a long time to charge too. It says it charges at 7.5 watts, it actually charges at 9.5 watts. So. Now the biggest problem for me though is the interface. We have these old-fashioned screens, they're monochromatic, fairly bright and easy to use, quite responsive. Like on the road and other things, they're not nearly as responsive as this, but this one and the Smallrig have highly responsive screens. I wonder if they're running a similar processing unit inside, because they're very snappy, have very similar audio quality and output. They both have a very low line out. Big problem for me is I've gotten so used to using the Hollyland Lark and the easy volume control knobs, and now we've got the Smallrig, again, easy volume control knobs. This is what you have to do to control the volume. Let's do this. I'm going to hold down the set button on the side of the receiver. Now, it's on the volume screen right now just because that's the last thing I did last time, but you might be anywhere. And then we press set, no, we don't press set. We hold down set again when we get to volume, and then we can change it up or down. It goes from 0 to 6, and even 6 is pretty quiet. Then when we're done, we hold down set again to save it, and then to get out of this menu, not obviously, I have to hold down the minus button, which jumps us back out. Now, my first inclination was to tap the power button once, but that just mutes the system. The main thing that anyone is going to do on these is adjust the volume, and the fact that it takes a held down button, a navigated menu, a held down button again, to select it, navigate up and down with 2 tiny buttons, hold it down again to save it, and then hold down another button to exit the menu. Oh my goodness. This is not what we're used to anymore. Maybe this used to be normal, but it's not normal anymore. We have to stop doing this. I don't know if they could make this easier with a firmware update or something, but I don't want to do that anymore. So overall, for our usability, based on new competition, it is incredibly annoying to use because of the antiquated user interface. The reception is as good or better than the past competitors, but not as good as its current competitor. So I have to give this a 6 out of 10. It's not impossible to use by any means, and 3 years ago this was normal, perfectly fine. But at today's standards, it just doesn't cut it, unfortunately. Value, let's see. Saramonic has always been known for high value products, so how does this one stack up? This one comes in at 300 American dollars. Let's compare that to the Smallrig Forevala, $200. The only thing it's really missing is the battery and the charging case, but this thing can easily fit in your pocket, much like the Godox. That's kind of a trade-off though. Let's compare it to the Hollyland Lark, which has a built-in battery charger. The reception isn't as strong as the Saramonic though. This is $280. It's 20 bucks less. This was more expensive, now it's less though. It's been out for a few years. Comica has the Boom X D2. That's their digital 2.4 gigahertz system. $220. Pretty cheap. Build quality is real dicey, whereas this one is hard as rock. And Rode Wireless Go 2. The pair doesn't even have a charging case, but if you get it with mics, it's 414 American dollars. Too much money in my books. DJI mic, $330, just a little bit more than this. More compact system, but also kind of an awkward shaped charging case. But overall, the value proposition here is very tricky. For $300, if this Smallrig didn't exist, the Saramonic would be having a much easier time. I can't give this higher than a 6 out of 10. The value proposition isn't terrible. It kind of sits up there with the big boys, but unless you're in like a rough and tough situation where the Smallrig's build quality might be an issue, it's hard to recommend the Blink 500. That gives us a 70%. That is lower than we got on the Smallrig. That's lower than some of these other things. I'm really disappointed at the price point Saramonic set this at. They were always so competitive in the past, and I know that they were working hard to go up market with this, but unfortunately this just isn't it. They needed to modernize things just a little bit more to make it appealing. I don't know if the firmware is updatable on this. If it is, maybe things can get easier in the future. If you have any questions or comments about this, the Saramonic Blink 500 Pro X, let me know down in the comments below. If you want something that is tough as nails with a tremendous amount of battery life, this might be the one for you. But if you want something that is fast and super easy to use, maybe the Smallrig is the one for you. It's a tough choice now. We've got a lot of options. If you want to pick one of these up, there are links in the description as well. So until next time, let's go take some photos, make some videos. Later.